Yesterday, we told you the story of a doctor's office on West Britain Road that has been trying for a couple of years to get a cement traffic island removed from in front of their parking lot. The island was put there when Britain Road was widened. However, Milda Mason, who works in the office, says their patients complain about trying to avoid the island and almost back into cars whizzing by on Britain Road. I talked with the State Department of Transportation.
And then they'll back over this thing and they'll straddle it.
Who put it there,
and so they don't know what it is, they don't remember, and they will try to back over the thing, trying to avoid High Center.
And at
any rate, they will end up surging onto Britain Road, and perhaps going the wrong way on the road, forgetting all this sort of things. And they just had a lot of fender benders and et cetera, plus all the gripes from the patients.
Oklahoma City's engineering department
said
the state did the project, so they were responsible, not the city.
This whole place is a parking spot that you cannot get into. And people come in, the next person that comes into our offices, one of our offices, is going to say, where are we supposed to park? You take your life in your hands crossing Britain Road.
Well, who put that island there anyway? Milda says it was the state doing a road widening project with federal funds. I checked in with the State Department of Transportation. Officials dug out the plans for that project and explained that they are not responsible for the traffic island.
Our involvement in the project was simply during the construction period to see that the job was built according to plan.
Okay, so it was a city project done with federal funds, built by the state, so the ultimate responsibility for it goes to who?
Goes to the city, because they have the control of the driveways along Britain Road.
The contract agreement would give Janine her $9,000 back at any time before the end of this year. Janine alleged she could not get Alpha President David Cox to return the money. She'd been trying for months. Monday, I talked with Cox on the phone. He said he was no longer president of Alpha Mud and was now with Alpha Energy, but he said he'd buy back Janine's stock in a couple days when someone was there to sign the check. Wednesday, Cox called Janine and said he needed a letter from her saying she would sell her stock. We went with Janine on Wednesday and her letter to give to Cox. He said he was with Rig Management Services that day, but he said he'd have to go to the Alpha Mud Board of Directors for her money. He said he would have a check for her Friday, today. Well, Janine called Alpha Mud this morning.
What I want to know if the check's ready for me to come over and pick it up. At 4:30. It's a cashier's check? Okay. I'll see you then. Bye.
Well, this afternoon, Janine went to Alpha Mud at its office on 4300 Highline Drive. When she came out, we asked her if she had received her money.
No, I didn't get my money. I got a letter that they had drawn up had an attorney draw up that says that my letter of authorization for them to repurchase it Wednesday wasn't enough. And I'm going to take these and look them over tonight and sign them and get them back to them, you know, if I think they're all right. And I'm supposed to get the money tomorrow again.
So after telling Janine this morning her money would be ready this afternoon, Alpha has still not lived up to its contract with Janine. Watch for next week's follow-up report. I paid a visit to Lois Gunner. She had called in your corner complaining that her natural gas went off in the night, leaving her, her husband, and her brother with no heat on one of the coldest nights.
We like to froze. Just like to froze to death because we couldn't get no heat. And then the neighbor down on council brought me some electric heaters. And And of course that helped, but the trouble of it is with them electric heaters, you can't use but one, because the brackets that throw them, out here, because my electric ain't strong enough to carry them. One.
Lois says she's pushing 70. Her husband is 76 and in a wheelchair, and her brother is 74, also disabled.
You get pretty cold, you get that old.
Lois says the two men, her husband and brother, depend on her to take care of them. They live on a fixed income, and that makes it pretty tough to pay $130, $140 a month gas bills and then not get any heat, but it's happened before. They get their gas from the Cashion Gas Company, run by the city of Cashion. But Lois thinks the actual gas well is in a field right next door to her house. Her big problem is when the gas went off, no one notified her. When she discovered it, she looked at her bill, and there was no telephone number to call to report a gas outage.
Well, I don't know why they couldn't give us some kind of number where we could get a hold of them in an emergency or something like that.
Yeah. I took Lois' question to the State Corporation Commission, which regulates Oklahoma's utility companies, but found the Cashion Gas Company has a different status.
The Cashion Gas Company is regulated by the city fathers or the city council members, which are elected by the people of the city of Cashion. They do not come under the jurisdiction or fall under the jurisdiction of the Corporation Commission.
Motley says Cashion Gas is not subject to Corporation Commission rules which concern customer safety.
Well, our first concern is for the safety of the consumers on the system. If say for instance, your pressure goes down, your pilot lights, could go out, and then if you're not at home or if you're asleep, if the pressure comes back up, then your house could fill with natural gas, which is definitely a hazard. So what we do, first of all, contact Pipeline Safety, which is one of the divisions under the commission, and they go to the area to see what they can do to control it, and we also try to notify all consumers of the danger.
Susan Collins and Kathy Pritchett of Petroleum Information told me that Georgetta Smith was blind, suffered from epilepsy, and on top of that, lived in squalor, something that sickened them. They wanted to help her.
It's filthy. It's horrid. Cockroaches and rats and mice. And
I've never seen anything like it in my life. It's worse than any animal lives, the way this girl's living.
Well, this is the house that Georgetta lives in. It doesn't look too bad from the front, but it gets worse as you go back. I walked around to the back of the house, which is in much worse shape. On the very back side, I found Georgetta's apartment. It was quite a shock.
Yeah, who is it?
That's Brad Edwards, Channel 4.
Yeah, who is it?
How you doing? It was just as Susan and Kathy described it. They were worried not only because Georgetta's room was so decrepit, but also because Georgetta was being evicted and had no place to go. But leaving here would be no loss. Holes in the walls and ceilings that Georgetta says rats and mice crawl through.
Be real still and you can hear a rat down behind my stove. Somebody's scared.
I can hear something down there. I don't know if it's a pigeon overhead or a rat down
It's a rat down behind my stove.
Georgetta is 30 years old. She receives disability checks and welfare amounting to about $350 a month. She and her husband are separated, so there's no one to help her, and being almost completely blind and suffering from epilepsy, it's difficult for her to help herself. She says she's been trying for 3 years to get out of there.
I have been trying for 3 years with the welfare and the housing authority, and I've got nowhere.
Well, what's been the holdup? What's been the problem?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. They haven't told me.
They don't tell you anything?
No, they just, well, we're going to do this and that and another, and then they just sit down on it,
What did they say they're going to do?
Oh, this one man said he was going to find me a house to live in, different place.
Yeah.
And they've all said they'd look into it, but that's as far as they get.
And so for 3 years, it's been nothing.
It's been nothing.
Well, that's not the entire story. I talked with state welfare officials today. They said they'd find a place for Georgetta, and they did, a boarding house. However, they felt Georgetta would not move without her dog, and the boarding house would not take pets. Georgetta told me she would leave the dog, but later decided she would not go because she was afraid the boarding house would be like an institution. However, all the tenants at her complex were being evicted in 4 days since the house was reportedly sold. However, I checked the eviction notice and found the landlord had not given the tenants 30 days written notice as required by law. I asked one tenant who owned the complex.
Some judge.
I met Missy and her mother, Judy, at Children's Memorial Hospital early this morning. It was time for more treatments. Missy has had a relapse of leukemia, and the battle now is to get her back into remission. The treatment always starts with a blood test, the least uncomfortable step in the process. The next step today was trying to inject a drug through a spinal tap. Missy says that is very painful. It also makes her ill, but it is necessary because of the relapse. Today there were difficulties with the procedure, so it will have to be repeated tomorrow, something Missy doesn't look forward to. Also today, Missy received her regular chemotherapy. One of the chemicals is so powerful, Nurse Barbara Catron said if the chemical leaked out, it could cause a burn on the skin.
The medication that we use has to be safely in the vein and not spill into the tissues, and causes Missy's blood count to drop, and she might end up in about a week back in the hospital as a side effect of the medication, not of the disease.
I see. How is her body bearing up to all of this? Can you tell?
She's very stable right now. She's in real good condition. Children are extremely resilient, and whereas you and I might have a much more difficult time coping with this, Missy is doing very well right now.
Missy's mother is divorced and has been trying to hold down a job while taking Missy to school in Mustang and to the hospital in Oklahoma City for leukemia treatments. The Mustang Ministerial Alliance contacted In Your Corner in an effort to raise money so Mrs. Peck can stay home with Missy for a month while Missy struggles to get the leukemia into remission again. Yesterday, we received contributions from King Energy of $100. The Graham Central Station Club is donating all its cover charges Friday night to Missy Peck, plus setting up donation jars in the club. And the Mustang Ministerial Alliance has already raised $500 for Missy. The Mustang Elementary School is planning a cheese sale in Missy's behalf. We also found that the Leukemia Society will pay for treatments not covered by insurance and 5 cents a mile for trips to the hospital.
Getting a little nervous.
Georgetta said she had quite a bit to move, but that was no problem. Fred Jones Ford in downtown Oklahoma City volunteered the use of a pickup truck to make the job a little easier. The rough part was digging through the debris in the apartment to round up Georgetta's belongings. She was still working on that while I began moving her out. Okay, Georgetta, what's next here?
Well, let's
How about
see.
this box here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, that was heavy, I know.
You're not kidding. It is heavy.
Well, now, you never asked me if I had heavy boxes. You just said, do I got boxes?
You tell me that. Georgetta is 30 years old. She has very little eyesight left. She is epileptic and has scoliosis, a spine condition. Georgetta was brought to my attention by a viewer who had taken Georgetta to church. Susan Collins said she'd be glad to help out Georgetta if she could move to a cleaner environment. No rats, no roaches, no garbage, no smell, as she has been living with.
Oh my God!
What?
Garbage!
Not all of it is. It just, what's on the top is all right. I just didn't clean it out.
I checked with the state welfare department and learned that they could get Georgetta into a downtown boarding house. But Georgetta hesitated, fearing a loss of independence and not wanting to separate from her constant companion, her puppy. Well, a viewer called In Your Corner and offered to keep Georgetta's puppy, and that satisfied her. Her apartment house was evicting everyone so the building could be renovated, so Georgetta decided to move. She left a few things behind, but not a prized possession from her grandmother in England.
That little doll, the reason I'm hanging on to it is my grandmother gave that to me when I was about 3 years old.
Over in England?
Mm-hmm. And you can tell by looking at it, it looks old. Yeah. And now here's what she said. She said, here's your boyfriend. Now, that way they can't take it away.
I took Georgetta and the loaded pickup truck to Godwin's boarding house, where preparations had been made for her arrival. Attendants were waiting for her.
Georgetta? Yes. Hi, I'm Claudia. Come on in, dear.
Missy Peck is back in the hospital, something to be expected during a relapse. This trip is the result of a chemical Missy's being given to battle the leukemia. It caused her white blood cells to drop, meaning Missy is susceptible to colds and infections. Her body can't fight them off alone now.
We brought her in to the clinic, and they took her blood count, and it was below 10, and they don't ever want it to go below 350.
What are her spirits like right now? Is she depressed?
She's extremely down. She just, her mouth is full of sores, and her fever is up and down, and her throat hurts, and she doesn't want to drink or eat or talk or anything.
Are you going to take off work while all this is going on?
Yes, she wants me here with her, so I'm going to stay home with her.
As a single parent now, Mrs. Peck has been working in downtown Oklahoma City, then making trips back to Mustang to take Missy to Children's Memorial for treatment. Now that Missy has suffered a relapse, Mrs. Peck needs about a month off work to spend time with Missy and to make the frequent hospital trips for treatment. Now, of course, she's spending her time at the hospital. Missy may be there 5 to 8 days. Mrs. Peck has been able to get a month off work, and the Mustang Ministerial Alliance initiated a fundraiser to help support the two during the time it takes to get over the relapse. Children's Memorial Dr. Charles Sexauer is optimistic that Missy's leukemia will go back into remission during that time.
We can predict what percentage of children will be going into remission, meaning that we can't find the leukemic cells. However, when you come to one patient, you cannot predict whether they will or will not. Missy has always had a good psychological outlook, and even though she's having some pain now from the sores in her mouth, as soon as those clear up, she's going to be bouncing right back.
When I looked in on Richard work last November, he was in a bad way. He had no job, and he was being evicted from his apartment since he couldn't pay the rent. Richard has epilepsy and cannot get a driver's license. That, of course, limits his job possibilities. I found that the county home would allow Richard to live there and receive medication for epilepsy until he found another job and another home. So we moved his belongings to a church basement, and then we moved Richard into the home. Well, after Richard's story aired, I heard from Jim Litney, a man who operates the South Central Sheltered Workshop in Tecumseh, Oklahoma. Jim thought he could help Richard, and it turns out they could help each other. Richard moved to the workshop in Tecumseh, so we went to visit him.
I came in one evening, I think it was a Saturday evening, and seen you were on television with Richard, and I felt that we could help Richard, so I called you and went and met Richard the next day. Well, Richard's going to go into a program, grounds and custodial maintenance program, and we hope to train him well enough to be able to use him as a permanent employee of the workshop. He has a good attitude toward the clients, the other client personnel here. He's got a good attitude toward work. He's got a good attitude toward the workshop in general. He's been down and out, and he knows what it's like. So.
But Richard does not feel down and out now. The South Central Sheltered Workshop gives him a place to learn new skills and use his old skills while earning pay. Also, he's transported to work, which helps tremendously since his epilepsy prevents him from driving. The workshop is helping many other handicapped people who have also been down and out at one time. For some, this is their first opportunity to work, to accomplish something.
The problem with the mentally retarded and the handicapped is that no one has ever given them an opportunity, and they've always been negative with these people and telling them you can't do this or you can't do that. Here we tell them you can do it. We try to design programs that they can accomplish without facing failure every day. And so if you don't have to face failure every day, you're going to be more successful. As you progress, then you do become more successful, and it works. It is a good program.
The nonprofit workshop looks for contracts with the state and with private enterprise. That helps finance them, and it provides work and more training for the handicapped. Sometimes leads to permanent jobs for them. They also receive donations, such as the radial arm saw provided by the Shawnee Junior Service League. But they need more to finance their training courses in custodial and grounds training, woodworking, sewing, and soon reupholstering and microfilming. Doyle and Pat Nix told me they are confused over their 1980 tax return, and they wonder if the Internal Revenue Service isn't confused as well.
We are supposed to get a refund check for $537, and we received a check for $7.78, and we never received one for $530. And I inquired about it, and they sent us copies saying that they did send us a check for $530. And when we received the copy of the check, it was made out to Troy Nix, my brother-in-law, and it was for $530.20. And it had Troy's name on it, Troy's address, and my husband's Social Security number. And on the back of it, Troy had endorsed it and, got his money. Mm-hmm. And they are trying to say that that money was ours and not Troy's, which Troy was due a refund of $530. And so he just naturally thought it was his, and we're still waiting for our $530.
Doyle and Pat have also been waiting for the IRS to straighten out this mess since they began asking questions at the end of July. Well, it's a pretty complicated mess. Doyle and Pat think their return was confused with that of Doyle's brother, Troy Nix, and there are a lot of similarities. The last name is the same, of course, Nix. Doyle and Troy's Social Security numbers are the same except for the last 3 digits, and the amount of the refunds are almost the same. Doyle and Pat were to get $537, and brother Troy was to get $530. And as Pat said, they were convinced of the mix-up when brother Troy got a $530 refund check with his own name on it, but it had Doyle's Social Security number. However, as yet, the IRS hasn't been able to clear up the confusion.
We've tried calling the Oklahoma City office, and we don't get any progress there. And after we received a couple of the letters from Austin, we started calling Austin. We don't get no further than the girl who answers the telephone. And I talked to her again this morning, and she said that she's the one that takes care of it, doesn't go any further than her. And she goes back and talks to whoever she needs to talk to, and then she comes back and tells us.
What do you think the IRS would do to you if you owed them this amount of money and you didn't pay it?
Well, they would probably be pounding on our door, that's for sure.
I contacted the local IRS Problems Resolution Office here at the federal courthouse, and I talked with Kathy Gaunt. According to Kathy, many people do put incorrect Social Security numbers on their tax returns, which may cause a mix-up. Doyle Nix says he did fill out both his tax return and his brother's tax return. And as you've seen, their Social Security numbers are quite similar, so he says he may have accidentally put his number on both returns, but he doesn't think so. Doyle says even if he did, the W-2 forms that go along with the tax return would show the correct Social Security numbers, and he wonders why the IRS didn't check that. However, Kathy Gaunt has still not been able to track down Doyle's problem. He hasn't been able to get his $530 tax return as yet. He's been trying to get an answer about this problem from the IRS since last summer. So in your corner, we'll continue to check back to see how much longer it will take for the IRS Problems Resolution Office to resolve this problem. Mrs. Alesperu said when she asked for a Formica countertop, she expected a solid wood countertop with butcher block Formica covering. But this is what she got. Pressed wood pieced together around the sink top with some sort of thin plastic covering which wouldn't even stick.
Well, I'd like an explanation of why he deceived us. And I want it, in case he's doing this to other people too, I think he should be stopped.
Where did they manage to find a carpenter who does this kind of work? In the newspaper classified ads under carpentry. There are two ads. The first says carpentry odd jobs, over-the-phone estimates on most jobs, available, and a phone number. The second ad had a similar message. It said available and dependable. Mrs. Alesperu said when they called, a man named Clinton Whiteman came out, surveyed the job, and said it'd be $150 with $75 down. Only when it came time to do the work, Whiteman sent an assistant. They haven't been able to reach Clinton again, nor has his assistant.
And when I walked into the kitchen a bit after that, I said, "What is that you're putting on that cabinet?" And he said, "Isn't that what you wanted?" And I said, "No, sir, it isn't, and I'm not paying for something like that." Yeah. And he was trying to glue it down. He picked up these big hunks of cement and tile off the floor, trying to weight it down, and he broke it. He broke that topping, he called it.
So, he just, without finishing it, he just left.
He just left. He said he was going to go. He tried several times to find Clinton.
Yeah.
And by phone, you know. And he couldn't. So he said, well, maybe he's at the house not answering the telephone. And I thought, well, that's strange.
Well, perhaps it's not so strange. I tried contacting Clinton Whiteman by telephone also 3 days in a row. Hello, is Clinton there? Do you know when he'll be back? Okay. So much for the available and dependable. I never reached Clinton by telephone. However, the number in the advertisement rings at this house in Bethany. When I arrived, I found two men at the home. They said they did not know where Clinton Whiteman was. I asked if he had another home somewhere.
Does he have a house of his own in town here?
Yeah, it's south side.
It's on the south side. Do you know what the address is?
I don't have it with me.
The man said he was a relative of Clinton and that they had worked for him but were just laid off. One of the men matched the description of Clinton Whiteman given me by Mrs. Alesperu. So I borrowed the Action 4 mobile unit, took it to the Alesperu's house, and asked them if either one of the men might be Clinton Whiteman. This is definitely the man.
Oh, yeah, that's Clinton.
You think that is?
Definitely. Definitely.
Yes.